Hello! So in today's video I have this old guitar. It's been laying around and haven't been taken care of, and so I'm going to show you just simple maintenance of your guitar. This will work on your acoustic guitar and on your electric guitar. Basic stuff. First we're going to remove the strings, just cut them off and throw them away. So you should be able to push the strings back in on themselves, and that should make the plugs pop up. But if the strings have been on for years and no one has cared about it, you might need to use your string winder. It has a little nudge on the end that you can push in and pull the pin out and take the string out. Next I'm removing the bridge, and I can see on this guitar that the bridge has cracked. Now, let's see if we can get it out. The wood has probably tightened up around it, so that's why it has cracked. Normally I would replace this, but since this is a beginner's guitar and it's not really worth that much, and also I don't think the customer in this particular case wants to spend the extra money, I'm going to put some super glue in there and it will be fine. So I'm just taking some super glue, I'm putting a dab on where it broke, I smear it out to make sure it's nice and even. Take the other part and I press them back together. Okay, so while the glue on that one is drying, I'm just taking a damp cloth with some warm water just from the tap, and I'm just gonna clean the entire guitar. You don't want to introduce a bunch of moisture into your guitar, but if you have a damp cloth, it won't do too much. And you can clean the rosewood on these guitars. Just make sure you don't put too much water on it. See if I can remove these old stickers that are and I'm just going to clean off the headstock as well, get all that grime and dust and crap out of there. And the back. And then the fretboard as well. Now already, just by cleaning the guitar, it looks a lot better. It has gotten some of its shine in it. We're not going to take out the scratches because I personally think that's not a part of maintenance, that's more of a part of a repair or something. Right here, for example, I can see that something is happening. And so, what I usually do is I just take a little bit of super glue, just a drop, and I smear it around, just to create a protective coat and let it sink in. I don't see that as preparing, I see it more as maintenance to make sure that that crack doesn't become a bigger issue later, because right now it's just a tiny little mark. I can see that I have one over here as well, and I just want to prevent it from becoming an issue later on in this guitar's life. So I'm just putting down a tiny dab of super glue, and I'll go through the entire guitar, look it over, and put a dab everywhere. It will sink in and disappear and just be like a mark on the guitar. So while the super glue dries on the guitar body, I'm just gonna take the bridge and a razor blade, and I'm just gonna cut away the squeeze out that occurred when I glued the bridge together. Super glue is really good because it dries really quick. So you just take the razor blade, you put it up against the piece and you drag it across, and it will automatically catch on the squeeze out, and you can just basically plane it down. You feel with your finger over it, and if you can feel the glue, you go back and you just continue, and then you just do it very lightly and carefully. Take your time. It will only take a couple of minutes anyway. This is something that goes quickly by nature. You just go back and forth like this, and you feel with your finger. You continue and go to next side. Here is a little bit more squeeze out. And then once you've gone all over the body, once you've gone all over the bridge, you're done. Okay, so the next thing I do is I take some oil. I use bike oil. It's synthetic oil, sometimes called. And I put a dab on the back of the tuners. All tuners have a way that you can get into them. These are open back tuners, so it's easy on them. But you don't need to use open back tuners. This will work on any tuners. If you have the old vintage one, they have a tiny little hole. If you have the newer ones that are encapsulated, then you have to go from the front. It's very easy. And then I just spin around every tuner like this. You don't need one of these to spin them around, but I like to do it. If you have one that you can put into a drill, it will go even quicker, but you don't need to go quickly. And just go through all the tuners so that the grease gets worked in. And you just put a drop, and then we're gonna leave this to sit just for a minute or two. Something like that. So some tuners you will feel are a little bit loose, while others aren't. So what you need to do is you need to tighten the screws. Just go through the tuners and feel them and tighten them. You don't want them to be stiff in this way. This is a good, but you don't want them loose in that direction. So something like that. Okay, so now we are gonna put some oil on the bridge and the fretboard because it's extremely dried out. And there are a bunch of different products, and I don't really feel like there is that big of a difference. You know, try something out, see what you think. You know, experiment. There are just, there are a bunch of different oils that you can use. You don't need to go the whole route of buying a branded, guitar finishing oil or something like that. You can use regular different kinds of wood oils. I have my own mixture, that's what I'm gonna use. And I'm just gonna basically put it down and let it soak it up. As you can see, just putting it in. And what we're going to do is we're just going to leave this to soak for maybe 5 minutes, and then we're gonna clean it up and just trying to get some of the oil in to the bridge cavity. And when we're just gonna wipe it on and wipe it off, basically. That's all. And the same thing with the neck. We're just gonna put a bunch of it on. Just go back and forth, up and down the neck, and let it soak in. And then we're gonna wipe everything off in a couple of minutes, or closer to 10 minutes maybe, and try to get rid of all the excess, just so that the fretboard gets to soak up what it needs to soak up. And it's kind of a lot to do right now because this guitar hasn't been maintained in many years. But if you do these things, like every time you switch strings, or I mean depending on how often you switch strings, every other pair of strings or something, you know, it's not gonna be that much work. You know, just like if your guitar is dirty and sticky and gross, clean it, you know. There's nothing really to it more than that. And if you feel your fretboard is dry, you know, moisturize it basically. And if your tuners are stiff, you need to oil them as well. So just, you know, basic maintenance things. Okay, so now the fretboard is dry. It's been soaking up oil and it feels all nice and good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to polish the frets. This guitar has not been used very much, and it's basically just been collecting dirt and grime. And so we don't need to level the frets. Sometimes you need to do that, but I don't consider that maintenance. I'm sort of more considering that like a touch-up job or something. You don't need to do that every week, but cleaning your guitar is something you might have to do more often. So we're gonna just start off by putting tape down, and then we're gonna polish the frets. So we'll put masking tape like that all the way down the neck. And if you put it up against the fret, you can squeeze it in with a razor blade from the side, and then you can cut along it. And just make sure you don't dig in to the wood, because otherwise you'll get a mark. And then you can just pull away the piece of tape that is along the fret, so that make sure that the frets are exposed without the wood being able to be damaged by the work we're gonna do, because that would be a shame, since we've oiled the fretboard and everything. It would be a shame if we ruined it afterwards. Up here on these frets, I just don't really bother with the whole putting down a tape and cutting it. I just put 2 pieces of tape instead, and I go because I'm not gonna do anything overly extreme on these frets. Okay, so the next step is I have some sandpaper, wet and dry sandpaper. This is 12,000 grids, and all I do is I roll it around my finger, and I'm gonna go over the frets like this. So you can see the tape is starting to get dirty, and that's why we do this on. That's why we put the tape down, because otherwise we would put a bunch of small metal dust into our fretboard, which is a shame, because then we would have to clean it out, which would dry it out, and then we would have to oil it again, and it would just mean all the work we've already done was in vain. And if you don't clean it with the metaling, you're going to get black fingers. Something like that. Now there are no bumps in it. So let's go to the next step. Okay, so the next thing is that we're going to polish the frets. Now, I see a lot of people on YouTube, they use a Dremel and they use one of these tiny little wire wheels, and they go across each fret and polish them, and that works really well. It's a good way of doing it, but I have an even easier way and cheaper. You can buy these big wheels for your Dremel, no, for your drill. You put some compound on, and then you can just go across all the frets. And yes, it will dirty up the tape, but we're going to remove the tape anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know how well you can see this, but those frets are a lot shinier than the ones up here. And so we're just going to go back and forth and smooth them out. So now that we've polished the frets, we can start removing the masking tape. And as you can see, it all looks perfect. The frets are nice and shiny, and the fretboard underneath is well oiled and feels healthy and fresh. So we're just gonna remove the tape. And if you do this, you know, I can't tell you that you should oil your guitar every other week, or that you should do it once a month or something like that, but you have to look at your guitar and look at how it feels, and is it dry, is it dirty, is it, you know, you clean your guitar when it's dirty, basically, you know, and oil it when it's dry, and polish the frets when you feel the strings are clinging to them. And if you do that, your guitar is going to basically be like a new guitar always. It's just going to be an amazing guitar to play, and it's going to be just fantastic. And you can keep going, you know, throughout your entire life basically with one guitar if you take care of it like that. And it's not like this is something that takes that much time to do. It takes, I mean, unless you're making a video about it, because then it takes a longer time, but if you do this without recording it, you know, it only takes maybe 20 minutes to do, because you have to wait for the fretboard to soak up oils and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay, so now the time has come to put in new strings. So we're gonna pop this back in and be careful not to crack anything. It's a little bit tight in there, but I think it will work fine. If it was any tighter than this, I would probably sand either the bridge down a little bit or widen the gap, but it's just on the edge of fitting. It's a snug fit, but I don't think anything is expanding or looking weird. So I think we're good. Next step is to put in strings and put the string inside of the channel of the pin, and you put the pin in with the string facing the guitar. You press it in, you pull it all the way up to the tuner. Okay, so the way I put strings on is I put the string through the hole and then I wrap it around once on the top, and then I tighten the strings up and I go under. And this looks maybe weird, but that's because if I turn around like I normally would, then I would be in the way of the camera. So that's why this looks so weird, because I'm not used to doing this the other way around. But this is a super simple way of putting the strings on. It basically nods itself up over the tension. So it becomes like a nod. Once you go to switch out the strings, you don't have to worry about them being hard to take off, which is basically all you need. So now we're basically all done. The strings are on the guitar and everything is cleaned and nice and looks good. The guitar almost looks new except for some small dings, but I feel like you want to keep your dings, right? No, but you can fix things, definitely. I think that's more than just basic maintenance. But anyway, the next thing is that if I play the guitar, it rattles a lot, and that's because we need to adjust this neck. And adjusting the neck is something that you need to be able to do. And if you look closely, you have either a port up here where the strings meet the body, or inside the sound hole. I hope you can see that little thing there. So you take one of these hexagon keys and you put it in there, and then you go to the right side if you need to tighten the neck, left side if you need to loosen it. And I think we need to loosen this neck. Let's try it. Now, you can do this whole measure things up and then move them, but you can also be like, you move the neck just a tiny bit. You play it. And if it rattles, you continue. So, once you've gone through all the strings, you play them. It's kind of hard being left-handed playing a right-hand guitar, but you just play every fret all the way up along the entire neck. And once you've done that and you can clearly hear all the tones, then you're basically done with the guitar, okay? You can measure out everything and make sure that you have the right correct depth, but if you go from where you can't hear it and slowly bring the neck back, that's another way to do it. It's a simpler and easier way, and if you're just starting out with guitars, that's probably the right way to do it. So, now this guitar is done, I'm gonna go and give it back to its owner, and hopefully he's gonna play it and love it and have awesome times with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video helped you, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below if you learned something, which I hope you did. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, play guitar and stay awesome. Bye bye.